on top of Old Smoky. If you write the word time. So you guys, we talked about how time is figured out, why some guy had to pick 24 hours instead of maybe 100 hours. Was that for you guys? Did you talk about that? Did you talk about that? And why somebody didn't split an hour into 100 minutes? Why it's 60 or 60? Yeah. So good, we got that down. Let's jot down so everybody knows, even though I'm sure you're all familiar with this. What are our time measurements? Well, our smallest unit of time, Carolina, is what? What's the smallest one? Well, for the most part, we can get smaller, but our smallest, yep. Second is our smallest unit of time, and if you put 60 of those seconds together, I'll bet you know what that is. You get that 1 whole minute. And if you take 60 minutes, you don't know why they decided on these, you end up with 1 what?
1 hour.
1 hour. And you'd have thought, since they're using 60s, why not just keep with 60s? Why not make 60 hours to make a day, and 60 days to make a year, and 60 years to make a, but they don't. We go to the next unit of measurement, you take hours, and what happens? You put string 24 of those together, you end up with a 1 day. And by the way, a day is how long it takes the Earth to do what again? Remember we talked about this? The Earth does what in 1 day? 1 day, 8 minutes. That would be a year. It takes us a year to go around the sun. It takes us a day to do what, Ronnie?
To rotate
Yeah.
around.
To spin around 1 time. 1 day is 1 spin. Which means even though we can't feel it, right now you are going at the breakneck speed of about how fast. Does anybody know how fast the Earth is actually turning?
A lot, like faster.
I believe the distance around the Earth is right around 24,000 miles. So if we do 24,000 miles in 24 hours, about how fast would we be spinning right now? You do that math. If you can divide 24,000 by 24, Ethan, we're doing about.
About 1,000 miles.
Exactly. We're going about approximately 1,000 miles per hour.
So how many
Which you would think you'd be kind of dizzy, but we kind of get used to it.
be going per minute?
How many miles per minute? We'll divide that by 60 again. What is it, about 116? 1,660 miles per minute, maybe? That's kind of a lot. You could go from here to, that's a lot, that's pretty fast. And if you're spinning it, if you're driving against the spin, you'd think that'd be kind of hard. We should be able to walk going which way? The Earth is spinning east to west. So walking this way should be harder than walking this way because the Earth is going that way. No, the Earth is going that way. No, the Earth is going that way. Yes, the Earth is going this way. So it should be harder to walk going west because the Earth is spinning against you, but we can't feel that. It's something about gravity and all that stuff. I don't understand. Did I get that right, Jonah? We could be all wrong. But Jonah.
How many milliseconds makes up 1 second?
Well, milli in math, like a millimeter is 1,000. So I would say if we're talking milliseconds, it'd be 1,000. We'd take 1,000 and make a second. That would be my surmise. It's like a millimeter is 1,000 things to make a meter. I'd say a millisecond is probably milli, like millennium means 1,000. All right, anyways, back to this here. So, and then here are some ones that fall in between. Days, we usually string 7 days together, and we call it a week. And I'm not sure why. What is up with the week? Why did we make 7 days a week? Does anybody know? I don't even know. I can't even think of it right now. John,
Actually, no, I just thought that doesn't make sense.
It could go back to creation.
Yeah, that's what
I was thinking that.
God did things in 6 days, rested on 7, so everybody said, hey, let's do everything in increments of 7, I don't know. And then you have, we don't necessarily go with, because months are not consistent. By the way, do you know why some months have 31 days and some have 30 and some have
I
29?
do not know.
Here's the reason, from what I understand, and I could be way wrong on this too, but the months were all named after, I believe, Roman Emperor Caesar, like, August was named after Augusta,
Oh, yeah.
and July was named after like something Julius or whatever, but anyways, when the guys were naming, when they were separating those days into months, one guy had 30 days, what months have 30 days, somebody know that?
I don't know all.
Mrs. Christ, give me a month that has 30.
June,
September.
November.
April, June, September.
Well, yeah, whoever had 30 days in June, when they came up with August, he wanted to have one more day, so he said he wanted 31 days in this month. I think that's true. I could be wrong. So, I don't know what happened to Mr. February. He apparently only gets 29. Anyway, yeah. How many months have 29 days?
One.
They all do.
Oh.
They all do.
Oh.
That's a small guy. How many, after days, we're gonna go to how many days in a year?
365.
Technically, 365 and a quarter, I think it is actually, but 365 days equals a year. Except, the book calls it this. Actually, 365 4 days, they call it a common year because we have those uncommon ones where there's 356. Yeah. 366 days in a leap year. Which I'm not sure when the next one is, but it's probably.
He did it in 3rd grade, so seventh
So it's
grade.
probably-
More in 7th grade.
Couple more years on that one. And then we get to when you start grouping years together. I probably should have left myself a little more room. You guys missed it. Mrs. Christ and I were alive for all the big year changes. They made a big deal out of these, but 10 years is a decade. 100 years is that century. 1,000 years is one millennium. Again, there's that milli. Centi, 100, deca means 10, milli means 1,000, 1 millennium. And some of us were alive when we turned into a new decade, century, and millennium. When it went from 1999 to the year 2000, we were all very excited about it. Especially because we thought computers were going to crash and our whole world was going to go away. Yes. Wait, no, you guys weren't born in Y2K. You guys were born. What year were you guys born? Jesus Christ, how does that make you feel? Older, yes. Ethan, your question?
Is an aeon a million years?
I have no idea. An eon, you mean?
Whatever.
I don't know. I don't know what gets. I don't know what's above the 1,000-year
We
millennium.
don't need to, we're not that deep.
We always, sometimes we get milli confused and think it's million, but it's not. Milli is 1,000. And then we probably have to look at. Oh, yeah. So then when we talk about days, let's write this down. And the clock, when you talk about a day, what time do you go from, like, today is what, 17th? At what time will this be the 18th? Ronnie?
12 a.m.
Which is midnight. And make sure you know that AM are the morning hours. And 12 o'clock AM we call midnight. But it is the beginning of our new day. And then we go through all this. Again, this is kind of a confusing sort of thing because why somebody didn't just keep coming up. The military does it because they don't wanna be confused, but why can't we have 13 o'clock, or 14 o'clock, or 15 o'clock? It would make life so much easier. So you got 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. I should have. And then when you get to 12 o'clock again, because we end up with two 12 o'clocks, anytime you write 12 o'clock, you have to write AM. The one at noon is 12 o'clock PM. And then all the PM hours start, 1 o'clock PM, 2 o'clock PM. But like I said, in the military, and if you've ever had a watch, they'll switch it back before the 24-hour day thing. Okay? I believe 12 o'clock they call is what?
It's 12 o'clock,
I thought it was 0 hours.
but 13.
Is it? Ask your dad when you go, what midnight is called in military time. I thought it was 0 hours.
Yeah, 0 hours, it's 13.
And then 12 o'clock, yeah, and then 1 o'clock in the afternoon is 1300, 1400, 1500. You just add 12 to all those. Just because in the military, because they do so many things at night.
That or they would say it's 100 day or 100 night.
You don't want to mess up is that morning or night. So if you don't, and you don't want to have to say AM or PM all the time. So if you just use 1500 hours, 1500 hours would be what time?
3 o'clock.
3 o'clock in the afternoon, right? If you take 12 away. Okay, so write down this problem, because here, time is, because it's split up into seconds like 60s and whatever, it's not an easy thing for us to add or subtract, because it gets a little goofy. So write down this problem, we'll see if we can't work through one of these. The movie, they went to a movie that was 2 hours and 5 minutes long. Let's say, they went to the movie that was 2 hours and 5 minutes long. It ended at 9:20. It ended at 9:20. What time did it start? How do you go about doing that? If you know the movie ended at 9:20, how would you figure out what time it started if it started 2 hours and 5, if it was 2 hours and 5 minutes long? What would you have to do? Gotta think a little bit on this. Ethan, you'd have to.
You have to minus, subtract 2 hours from 9 o'clock, and then subtract that, and then take
Subtract the
away
5
5
minutes.
from 20.
Alright, so it's pretty simple. This one's an easy one because you end up with 7:15. But here's where it gets kind of dicey for us. Let me change the numbers a little bit. Let's say the movie was 2 hours 25 minutes long. So if it started at 9:20 and I'm subtracting 2 hours 25 minutes, this is why time confuses us. Because it's not in our normal system based on tens. There's not 10 minutes in an hour or 10 hours in a day. So because you have to borrow, because I can't take 25 away from 20, I have to take an hour away from the 9. I still make that as an 8. But what happens to the 20? Usually I take and I put a 1 up there and make it 30, but that's not right, because if you take an hour, how many minutes is an hour? 60. So you have to take 60 minutes and put it over here, not just 10 minutes. So instead of being 20, this number actually ends up being 80, 60 plus the 20, because it's 60 minutes plus the 20 minutes you already have. That ends up being 80. And then you can do your subtracting. Now, because, I mean, you do it just 25 from 80 is, 6:55, and then 8 from 2, it would start at 6:55, whatever your time is. And make sure when you label these, you have to put PM or AM with them, because otherwise we get confused. I think those are supposed to be. And that's why time is so confusing, because it's not based on tens. You have to think, when you borrow an hour, you have to put 60 minutes in that other category. Or if you get more than an hour, like this. What time is it? What time is it when, and what time is it? 1 hour and 55 minutes after 3:15. What time is it 1 hour and 55 minutes after 3:15? So, this is an addition problem, right, because you're going later. So if you take 3:15 and add 1 hour 55 minutes to it, when I add the minutes together, what do I get? I end up with 70 minutes. Okay? Which is 70 minutes more than an hour? Yes, so you're gonna have to carry some over, but what do I do with that 70? Again, how many minutes are in an hour? 60, so if I move an hour over here, I have to take 60 away from 70, which means I'm left with 10 minutes, and I put my hour over there. So 3 plus 1 plus 1 is 5, so 5. How many like time? Time is always ticking, isn't it? Look at page 174 with me, please. Let's see if we do some time problems here. Sometimes there's no easy way of doing time, by the way. It's just good old-fashioned, grading, hard mathematical work. It's like there's no easy way to learn to shoot free throws without doing what? Shooting free throws over and over. Right hand, left hand, both hands, backwards, forwards. Probably not both hands. I always see if you're catching that. Nice work. Look at page 174 with me, will you, 5th grade? We are going to work through the practice problems there. See if you can get an idea there. Because we haven't talked about a couple things there. For example, letter A on page 174. You with me? 174, letter A? It says 4 centuries is how many years? Olivia? 400, yes, a century is 100 years, so 4. Now, letter B we haven't talked about. It says, according to the calendar in example 2, so you're going to have to turn back, what is the date of the 3rd Thursday in June 2014? So you got to flip back to where it says example number 2. Look at the 3rd Thursday. And the first thing, Ellie Stewart, you have to figure out is, since there's 2 T's up there, well, how do you know which one is Thursday? Yes. Sometimes they put TU and TH there. Now be careful with this, because when you tell what date the 3rd Thursday is, not only do you have to give the month and the date, but you got to give the year, Ellie. So it is what?
June 19th, 2014.
Yeah, you'd have to write down June 19th, 2014, is that what it was? I didn't. Yeah, so that's what you need to write down. You don't have to draw the calendar for me, just write the date. How about practice letter C? A leap year is how many days? Chloe, a leap year is how many days? Very good, 366. What is the name for 1/10 of a century? And again, if you struggle with that, you can always kind of do this. Here's your century. A century is 100 years, and you're cutting it into 10 equal pieces, which means this little piece has to be 100 divided by 10 is 10. So what is 10 years? Brody?
A decade.
A decade. You are very write the time that is 2 minutes after 8 in the evening. 2 minutes after 8 in the evening, which would be, I know it's tough. I think they're looking for AM and PM on this, by the way. Lacey, 2 minutes after 8 in the evening would be?
7:15.
No, after 8, not before 8. 2 minutes after 8 o'clock.
8:02
AM or PM?
a.m.
Night in the evening is
Oh,
PM. 8:02 PM. Letter F, write the name that is a 8:45 in the morning. 8:45. And in different parts of the country, they'll say 8:45, 9:15. Mrs. Christ, you grew up in New York, right?
Mhm.
What did they say when it was,
Quarter till.
they always said quarter till,
I'm just
quarter of? They go 9:30? No, it's always quarter.
Depends on the person, mostly,
Quarter.
half past.
Did they go 9:30? We don't say 9:30 a lot. Connor, what is 8:45 is?
8:45 a.m.
8:45, 15 minutes before 9 o'clock in the morning. And I'm not sure, you'd have to ask Ms. Shum the exact. AM, PM, does it have to be capital letters, little letters? They use little letters with periods between them. Is it definitely little letters? But you see it so many places with capital letters. Maybe it's acceptable in multiple things there. How about 20 minutes after noon? Who's got 20 minutes after noon? River?
12:20 p.m.
12:20 PM, yes. How about 30 minutes after midnight? William?
12:30 a.m.
12:30 AM. I'll do little letters with keywords. How about, if it is morning, what time is shown by the clock? Anybody have trouble reading analog clocks that don't have things up there? Really? Did Mrs. Lutz go hard at those?
Yeah.
My clock can be hard to read because it really doesn't have numbers on it, it has all mathematics. Sam, what time is that?
11:35 a.m.
Wait, say that again?
11:35 a.m.
Say again?
11:35 a.m.
No. John?
11:25.
11:25, yeah. 11:25 AM. I can see how that happens. Get your clock backwards there. What time would be shown by the clock 2 hours later than that? 2 hours later. Jonah?
1:25 p.m.
1:25 PM. How about 2 hours earlier? Okay,
9:25 a.m.
and the letter L, yes, that is correct. The movie started at 3:15 and ended at 5. How long was the movie? How much time is it from 5 o'clock to, or from 3:15 to 5? And there's a couple different ways you can think about that. We are going from 3:15 to 5 o'clock. You could do it out as a subtraction problem, or you could just kind of do it like this. Try to get to the next even hour, you'd have to add 45 minutes, right? That would get you to 4 o'clock. And then how long is it from 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock? 1 hour. If you put an hour with 45 minutes, you end up with, that goes hard. Ellie Stewart? Hour 45 minutes. Yeah, precisely. Perfect, all right, that's great. That was just a lovely dissertation about time.